Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. US President Joe Biden drops out of presidential race, endorses Kamala Harris as the nominee after weeks of relentless pressure from fellow Democrats. Harris thanks Biden for endorsing her, wins the backing of some Democrats, but others remain silent. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance go full throttle against Democrats after Biden quits. Trump says Harris will be easier to beat than Biden. Israel to send a delegation for hostage deal talks with Hamas on July 25th. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to leave for the US to meet with Biden. And India's parliament session to begin with tabling of economic survey report. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to present national budget on Tuesday. After weeks of mounting pressure, United States President Joe Biden on Sunday dropped out of the November presidential election. In an unexpected announcement, US President Joe Biden stated that he would not seek re-election. Biden said he will remain in his role as president until his term ends on January 20th, 2025, and will address the nation this week. He emphasized on the considerable progress made during his time, stating that America has the world's strongest economy. Biden expressed sincere thanks, saying that serving as president was the greatest honor of his life. The pressure on President Biden to pull out started building up from within his party following a disastrous performance in the presidential debate on June 27th. In recent days, a flood of Democratic leaders, including members of Congress and influential supporters of the party, have called on him to step aside from the race. Joe Biden is the first sitting president since 1968 to drop out of the race. The 81-year-old Biden is the oldest person ever to have occupied the Oval Office. After ending his presidential campaign, US President Joe Biden endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as the presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. In a statement posted on social media platform X, Biden recalled that his first decision as a Democratic Party's nominee in 2020 was to choose Harris as his vice president and termed it as the best decision he made. Biden called on Democrats to come together and beat Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. After Biden endorsed Kamala Harris, his vice president, to be the new Democratic nominee, Harris said she was honored to have the president's endorsement. Releasing a written statement and posting on social media platform X, Harris thanked Biden for his extraordinary leadership and decades of service to our country. She described Biden's decision to end his re-election bid as a selfless and patriotic act. Harris will be the first black woman to be a major party candidate for presidentship if chosen by her party at the Democratic National Convention, which begins on August 19th. Mitch McCain gets us more from the US.
The shocking news that Joe Biden has decided not to run for the presidency of the United States for a second term, instead endorsing Kamala Harris, as you mentioned a few moments ago. Now, Harris says she's honoured to have the president's endorsement. She said in a statement, "Over the past year, I have travelled across the country talking with Americans about the clear choice in this momentous election." Now, Democrats have responded very much in a positive way towards Kamala Harris tonight. A number of prominent Democrats have endorsed her already. People like Joe Biden, as I mentioned, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, other governors, including Roy Cooper, Amy Klobuchar, and it's reported that Gretchen Whitmer is also supporting her, but hasn't come out with a complete endorsement just yet. So to answer your question, Democrats are responding positively towards Biden's endorsement of Kamala Harris, and particularly, as you mentioned, fundraising. This is critical. Now, there's a fundraising group called Act Blue, and they raise money for Democratic presidential candidates. They say they've raised $46 million today, which is one of the biggest days, if not the biggest, of this election campaign in terms of fundraising for the Democrats. So it seems the politicians and supporters, everyday Americans, are getting behind Kamala Harris.
If Biden's endorsement is accepted, Kamala Harris will become the first black woman and first Indian origin woman to contest the U.S. presidential election. Harris, a former U.S. Senator and California Attorney General, is the first African-American and Asian person to serve as the Vice President. Her 3.5-year White House tenure has been characterized by a staff turnover and early policy portfolios, including migration from Central America. Influential Democrats have signaled Harris would be the best option to lead the ticket. Some on Wall Street are starting to indicate her as a preference. Recent polls suggest Harris could do better than Biden against Trump, the Republican candidate. Some Democrats believe Harris could energize Democratic-leaning groups, including black voters. As president, Harris's public Israel strategy is identical to Biden's. She was the first senior leader of the U.S. government to call for a ceasefire in March. Since the Supreme Court repealed women's constitutional right to abortion in 2022, Harris has become the Biden administration's foremost voice on reproductive rights. Harris would take over money raised by Biden campaign and inherit campaign infrastructure, a critical advantage with just 4 months before Election Day on November 5th. Many Democrats on Sunday also backed Vice President Kamala Harris to run as the party's presidential nominee against Donald Trump. All the 50 Democratic Party state chairs have thrown their weight behind Vice President Kamala Harris to be the party's new presidential nominee. The chairs held a conference call on Sunday after President Biden announced that he was stepping aside as the party's candidate. Tennessee Democratic National Convention delegates also unanimously voted on Sunday to support Harris for the Democratic presidential nomination. Former President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, who served as Secretary of State under President Barack Obama, also endorsed Harris in a statement. Hours after U.S. President Biden dropped out from the presidential race, former U.S. President Barack Obama issued a statement on Sunday. Obama weighed in on his former vice president's unprecedented decision to step aside for what Biden said was for the good of the Democratic Party and the country. Notably, Obama did not name or endorse Vice President Kamala Harris to be the nominee, even though Biden has said that she has full support and endorsement. In a statement, former U.S. President Barack Obama has praised Joe Biden as a patriot of the highest order, saying the U.S. president had put American interests ahead of his own as he decided not to seek re-election. Reactions from foreign leaders and officials started pouring in on U.S. President Joe Biden's decision to end his campaign to seek re-election in November. New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon on X wrote, and I quote him, "President Biden has dedicated his life to public service, and that is something that deserves much respect. I thank the President for his leadership of the United States and his commitment to New Zealand, and I look forward to working with him for the remainder of his presidency." German Chancellor Olaf Scholz wrote, "Joe Biden has achieved a great deal for his country, for Europe, for the world. Thanks to him, transatlantic cooperation is close, NATO is strong, and the U.S. is a good and reliable partner for us. His decision not to run again deserves recognition." British Prime Minister Keir Starmer wrote, and I quote him, "I respect President Biden's decision and I look forward to us working together during the remainder of his presidency." Starmer said in a statement, "I know that as he has done throughout his remarkable career, President Biden will have made his decision based on what he believes is in the best interests of the American people." Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on X wrote, and I quote him, "Thank you for your leadership and ongoing service, President Biden. The Australia-US alliance has never been stronger with our shared commitment to democratic values, international security, economic prosperity, and climate action for this and future generations." Not coming as a surprise, as US citizens have been saying, is US President Joe Biden's withdrawal from the presidential race of 2024. Well, various events cooked up to the final conclusion of Biden dropping out. Antara Sinha tells us more.
US President Joe Biden endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic contender for the November election and declared on Sunday that he will not be a part of the US presidential race this year. Biden's decision was made in the face of growing health concerns and party sentiment that he would lose to Republican contender Donald Trump. The calls for Joe Biden to step aside started right after the disastrous presidential debate in June with Republican rival former President Donald Trump. March 2024, by securing the majority of the required delegates, Joe Biden secured the Democratic presidential nomination in March this year. June 27 debate. Biden's low-energy, muted and garbled performance at the June 27th presidential debate against Donald Trump didn't live up to the expectations. The debate drew criticism from Democratic voters, donors, and former and current aides. July 4th, Abigail Disney said she plans to withhold donations to the Democratic Party until Biden drops out. Abigail Disney is granddaughter of Roy O. Disney, who co-founded the Walt Disney and has funded Democratic Party for years. July 5th, Biden refuses to withdraw nomination. In a TV interview, he said, "If the Lord Almighty came down and said, 'Joe, get out of the race,' I would get out of the race." July 16th, President Joe Biden dismissed any possibility of stepping down, said he was all in to seek re-election on November 5th. July 17th, Representative Adam Schiff, the Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate in California, became the most high-profile elected Democrat to publicly call for Biden's withdrawal from the presidential race. Former President Barack Obama, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and former Speaker Nancy Pelosi also tried and convinced Biden to step down. July 18th, Biden tested positive for coronavirus with mild symptoms shortly after conceding he would consider dropping his re-election bid if doctors diagnosed him with a serious medical condition, cutting short a trip to Las Vegas and flew to his beach home in Delaware to go into isolation. July 21st, Joe Biden announces he is dropping out of the presidential race and endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democrats' nominee for the November election. Antara Sinha for DD India.
All right, this brings us to the next question. What next after Joe Biden pulls out of the US presidential race? Joe Biden endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to fight in his place. Kamala Harris may continue the campaign in place of Biden. Democrats will start expressing support or oppose her. Other candidates may also express their willingness to be the nominee. Convention of Democrats is to take place from August 19 to 22nd in Chicago. A total of 4,700 Democratic delegates to vote to select a nominee in case of fight. The convention will formally endorse her to be the Democratic candidate. On her part, she can continue campaigning. She can utilize the donations collected by Biden for campaign. The candidates would have to go for mini primary in 50 states and other territories. All the 50 state heads of Democratic Party endorse Harris. Former U.S. President and Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump responded to Joe Biden's decision to end his campaign. And he said that he thinks Vice President Kamala Harris will be easier to defeat in November's election than Biden. Trump also attacked Biden and Harris on social media while saying that Biden was unfit to continue serving as the president. On his Truth Social platform, Trump wrote, and I quote him, that the country has suffered greatly because of Biden's presidency, but we will remedy the damage he has done very quickly. Republican vice presidential candidate nominee J.D. Vance reacted on X and he said, I quote him, Joe Biden has been the worst president in my lifetime and Kamala Harris has been right there with him every step of the way. Over the last 4 years, she co-signed Biden's open border and green scam policies that drove up the cost of housing and groceries. She owns all of these failures, and she lied for nearly 4 years about Biden's mental capacity, saddling the nation with a president who cannot do the job. President Trump and I are ready to save America. Whoever is at the top of the Democrat ticket, bring it on. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson called for President Joe Biden to resign immediately, shortly after the incumbent announced that he was dropping out of the presidential race. The Louisiana representative wrote on social media platform X on Sunday afternoon, I quote him, "If Joe Biden is not fit to run for president, he is not fit to serve as president. He must resign the office immediately." In the post, Johnson called this an unprecedented juncture in American history. He criticized the Democratic Party, saying the self-proclaimed party of democracy has proven exactly the opposite by removing Biden from the presidential ticket. He said the party invalidated the votes of more than 14 million Americans who selected Joe Biden to be the Democratic nominee for president. You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break. But after the break, tension begins to ease in Bangladesh as the country's top court scraps quotas for government jobs. Satellite images reveal extent of damage caused by Israeli strikes on Yemen's Hodeidah port. And how women in Ukraine are stepping up to fill the shortage of tram drivers, we tell you ahead.
As the world gears up for the biggest sporting extravaganza, Olympics 2024, we at DD India are all set to bring you reports, reactions and all the latest action from Ground Zero. Watch DD India's super exclusive show, Cheer for Bharat. Only on DD India from July the 22nd at 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT. Get ready to cheer for Indian athletes at the Paris Olympics 2024.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD India News Hour. Let's get to updates on Israel-Hamas conflict now. In response to various rallies demanding a deal to release hostages from Gaza, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday decided to bring the country back to the negotiating table for a hostages for ceasefire deal in Gaza. Netanyahu's office issued a statement stating that Israel will send a delegation charged with negotiating a hostage deal with Hamas on Thursday. However, the statement did not mention details about Netanyahu's U.S. visit, considering the demands by Israelis for him to stay back in the country. Netanyahu is bound to leave for the U.S. today. And fears are growing of a wider regional conflict in West Asia as hostilities step up between Israel and Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry says it is following the developments with great concern, urging maximum restraint from both the parties. DD India's Sarah Coates has more from Tel Aviv.
Israel continues to say that it will strike at anyone who hits anyone here in Israel and causes damage, causes death. So it's certainly a very concerning situation. And this is one of the reasons that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is travelling to Washington over the next day. He'll be meeting with the US President Joe Biden, who continues to send his top diplomats to the region as part of this shuttle diplomacy to really try and bring down tensions in the region. But it's not just tension between Israel and the Houthis. We also need to remember the deteriorating situation on Israel's northern border with Lebanon amid these daily tit-for-tat strikes between Israel and Hezbollah, with a number of fires burning in northern Israel, the result of drones, rockets sent over from southern Lebanon as Israel continues to hit what it is calling Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. So certainly a very worrying situation, a situation that world players, international players want to bring down as soon as possible, really amid fear that all of this could potentially drag the region into a wider regional conflict, which could in turn draw in Iran. In Tel Aviv, Sarah Coates reporting for DD India.
Following Israel's retaliatory strikes in Yemen, satellite imagery revealed the extent of damage at Yemen's Hodeida port on Sunday. Storage tanks at the port appeared to be burning as thick plumes of black smoke billowed out. A large area of the port had been scorched black, while other areas appeared relatively undamaged. Medical sources in Yemen said 6 people were killed and in fact over 80 others were injured in Israel's strikes on Hodeida a day after a drone launched by the Iranian-backed Houthis hit Israeli economic hub Tel Aviv. Israel's military spokesperson said the port had been used by the Houthis to receive weapon shipments from Iran. The targets included dual-use sites such as energy infrastructure. Concerns are rising over the prospects of war in Gaza escalating into a broader conflict in the region. This after Israeli officials say that they successfully shot down a missile fired from Yemen over the weekend. It's seen as a retaliatory act after an Israeli airstrike reportedly killed 6 people and injured 87 in a Houthi-controlled area of Yemen. William Denslow reports from Iraq's capital, Baghdad.
According to the Houthis, they say these types of attacks on Israel will continue. According to Israeli officials, Houthis have launched around 200 or so attacks on Israeli positions since October 7th and the war in Gaza that was launched in response to the Hamas attacks on Israel that day in October around 9 months ago. According to Israeli officials, the latest Houthi projectile was shot down using its Arrow 3 defense system. That came in response to an Israeli airstrike in Hodeida, which is a Houthi-controlled part of Yemen. According to Israeli officials, they were targeting military targets. But for the Houthis, they say a power plant and oil facility were struck. Now, this attack came in turn just a few days after the Houthis conducted a drone strike in Tel Aviv that killed 1 person. Now, according to Houthi officials speaking to Al Jazeera, they say that their strikes are in coordination with other regional groups, including those in Lebanon, in Palestinian territories, as well as in Iran and right here in Iraq. We've heard from Saudi officials, they're calling for maximum restraint. This as there are growing fears that the war in Gaza we're seeing could have regional ramifications and a regional spillover. William Denslow in Baghdad reporting for DD India.
Business resumed in Bangladesh's capital on Sunday when curfew was eased after the Supreme Court scrapped most government job quotas. The quotas on government jobs had sparked deadly student-led protests, killing at least 114 people in Bangladesh. The protest included reserving 30% of government positions for the families of those who fought for independence from Pakistan. Dismissing a lower court order, the Supreme Court directed that 93% of the government jobs in the country should be open to candidates on merit. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government had scrapped the quota system in 2018, but the lower court reinstated it last month, pegging total quotas at 56%, sparking the protest and an ensuing government crackdown. All right, we'll continue with the bulletin, but at present, we'll take you live. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is addressing media persons ahead of the Parliament session.
सोमवार है, इस पवित्र दिवस पर एक महत्वपूर्ण सत्र का प्रारंभ हो रहा है और सावन के इस पहले सोमवार को मैं देशवासियों को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। आज संसद का मानसून सत्र का भी आरंभ हो रहा है। देश बहुत बारीकी से देख रहा है कि संसद का यह सत्र सकारात्मक हो, सृजनात्मक हो और देशवासियों के सपनों को सिद्ध करने के लिए एक मजबूत नींव रखने वाला हो। साथियों, भारत के लोकतंत्र की जो गौरव यात्रा है, उसमें ये एक महत्वपूर्ण पड़ाव के रूप में मैं देख रहा हूं। व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे भी, हमारे सभी साथियों को भी ये अत्यंत गर्व का विषय है कि करीब 60 साल के बाद कोई सरकार तीसरी बार वापस आए और तीसरी पारी का पहला बजट रखने का सौभाग्य प्राप्त हो। ये भारत के लोकतंत्र की गौरव यात्रा की अत्यंत गरिमापूर्ण घटना के रूप में देश इसे देख रहा है। ये बजट सत्र है। मैं देशवासियों को जो गारंटी देता रहा हूं, क्रमशः रूप से उन गारंटियों को जमीन पर उतारना, इस लक्ष्य को लेकर के हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। ये बजट अमृतकाल का एक महत्वपूर्ण बजट है। हमें 5 साल का जो अवसर मिला है, आज का बजट हमारे उन 5 साल के कार्य की दिशा भी तय करेगा। और ये बजट 2047 जब आजादी के 100 साल होंगे, तब विकसित भारत का जो हमारा सपना है, उस सपने को पूरा करने की मजबूत नींव वाला बजट लेकर के हम कल देश के सामने आएंगे। हर देशवासी के लिए एक गर्व की बात है कि भारत बड़ी इकोनॉमी वाले देशों में सबसे तेज गति से आगे बढ़ने वाला देश है। गत 3 वर्षों में लगातार 8% ग्रोथ के साथ, 8% ग्रोथ के साथ हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, हम ग्रो कर रहे हैं। आज भारत में पॉजिटिव आउटलुक, इन्वेस्टमेंट और परफॉर्मेंस एक प्रकार से अपॉर्चुनिटी की पीक पर है। ये अपने आप में भारत की विकास यात्रा का एक अहम पड़ाव है। साथियों, मैं देश के सभी सांसदों से, किसी भी दल के क्यों न हो, मैं आज आग्रहपूर्वक कहना चाहता हूं कि हम गत जनवरी से लेकर के हम लोगों के पास जितना सामर्थ्य था, उस सामर्थ्य को लेकर के जितनी लड़ाई लड़नी थी लड़ ली। जनता को जो बात बतानी थी बता दी। किसी ने राह दिखाने का प्रयास किया, किसी ने गुमराह करने का प्रयास किया, लेकिन अब वो दौर समाप्त हुआ। देशवासियों ने अपना निर्णय दे दिया। अब चुने हुए सभी सांसदों का कर्तव्य है, सभी राजनीतिक दलों की विशेष जिम्मेवारी है कि हमने दल के लिए जितनी लड़ाई लड़नी थी लड़ ली। अब आने वाले 5 वर्ष के लिए हमें देश के लिए लड़ना है, देश के लिए जूझना है, एक और नेक बनकर के जूझना है। मैं सभी राजनीतिक दलों से भी कहूंगा कि आइए हम आने वाले 4 साढ़े 4 साल दल से ऊपर उठ करके सिर्फ और सिर्फ देश को समर्पित होकर के संसद के इस गरिमापूर्ण मंच का हम उपयोग करें। जनवरी 29 जब चुनाव का वर्ष होगा, आप उसके बाद जाइए मैदान में, सदन का भी उपयोग करना है कर लीजिए। वो 6 महीने जो खेल खेलने खेल लीजिए, लेकिन तब तक सिर्फ और सिर्फ देश के गरीब, देश के किसान, देश के युवा, देश की महिलाएं, उनके सामर्थ्य के लिए, उनको एम्पावर करने के लिए जन भागीदारी का एक जन आंदोलन खड़ा कर करके 2047 के सपने को पूरा करने के लिए हम पूरी ताकत लगाए। मुझे आज बहुत दुख के साथ कहना है कि 2014 के बाद कोई सांसद 5 साल के लिए आए, कुछ सांसदों को 10 साल के लिए मौका मिला, लेकिन बहुत से सांसद ऐसे थे जिनको अपने क्षेत्र की बात करने का अवसर नहीं मिला, अपने विचारों से संसद को समृद्ध करने का अवसर नहीं मिला, क्योंकि कुछ दलों की नकारात्मक राजनीति ने देश के संसद के महत्वपूर्ण समय को एक प्रकार से अपनी राजनीतिक विफलताओं को ढांकने के लिए दुरुपयोग किया है। मैं सभी दलों से आग्रहपूर्वक कहता हूं कि कम से कम जो पहली बार सदन में आए हैं, ऐसे बहुत बड़ी संख्या में हमारे माननीय सांसद हैं और सभी दल में हैं, उनको अवसर दीजिए, चर्चा में उनके विचारों को प्रकट करने का मौका दीजिए, ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोगों को आगे आने का अवसर दीजिए। और आपने देखा होगा कि पार्लियामेंट के नए संसद गठन होने के बाद जो पहला सत्र था, 140 करोड़ देशवासियों ने बहुमत के साथ जिस सरकार को सेवा करने का हुक्म किया है देशवासियों ने, उसकी आवाज को कुचलने का और लोकतांत्रिक प्रयास हुआ। 2.5 घंटे तक देश के प्रधानमंत्री का गला घोंटने का, उनकी आवाज को रोकने का, उनकी आवाज को दबाने का लोकतांत्रिक परंपराओं में कोई स्थान नहीं हो सकता है और इसका कोई पश्चाताप तक नहीं है, दिल में दर्द तक नहीं है। मैं आज आग्रहपूर्वक कहना चाहता हूं, देशवासियों ने हमें यहां देश के लिए भेजा है, दल के लिए नहीं भेजा है। ये सदन दल के लिए नहीं, ये सदन देश के लिए है। ये सदन सांसदों तक की सीमा तक नहीं है, 140 करोड़ देशवासियों की एक विराट सीमा करके ये लिए है। मैं विश्वास करता हूं कि हमारे सभी माननीय सांसद पूरी तैयारी के साथ चर्चा को समृद्ध करेंगे। कितने ही विरुद्ध विचार होंगे, विरुद्ध विचार बुरे नहीं होते हैं, नकारात्मक विचार बुरे होते हैं। जहां सोचने की सीमाएं समाप्त हो जाती है, देश को नकारात्मकता की जरूरत नहीं है। देश को एक विचारधारा, प्रगति की विचारधारा, विकास की विचारधारा, देश को नई ऊंचाइयों पर ले जाने वाली विचारधारा से हमें आगे बढ़ाना होगा। मैं पूरा ही आशा करता हूं कि हम लोकतंत्र के इस मंदिर का भारत के सामान्य मानवीय की आशा आकांक्षाओं को पूर्ण करने के लिए सकारात्मक रूप से उपयोग करेंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद साथियों।
So that was Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaking ahead of Parliament session, the monsoon session that begins today. It is July 22nd. The session will continue till August 12th. And the Prime Minister began by noticing that it is the first Monday of the month of Sawan and it is an auspicious day and the monsoon session begins today. He also wished the session plays an important foundation in fulfilling the aspirations of the countrymen. He also said that this is an important phase in India's journey and it is a matter of pride that a government is elected thrice and it is presenting the budget for the third time in a row. The Prime Minister also said that this budget is an important budget of Amrit Kal. It will show the direction and be a foundation of India's ambitions of development and progress by 2047. He's also talked of how India is one of the fastest growing economies with growth of around 8% and positivity is at its peak. He also reminded the opposition that now that the nation has given the verdict and has elected the new government, it is now for them to collectively work for betterment of the nation for the next 4 years. He also urged the opposition members to work for nation's poor, youth and women to fulfill the 2047 dream of the nation. He also called for the opposition to let the parliament function so that the first time MPs can participate in the proceedings and make their voices heard. He also reminded the opposition that these MPs have been elected to serve the nation and not serve the interest of their respective parties. So that was the gist of what the Prime Minister said ahead of the monsoon session that begins today. To talk more about it, we're joined in by our correspondent. We are joined in by Dibendu Mondal and he will talk more about the monsoon session. Dibendu, good morning. Just a while back, we talked of heard the Prime Minister talk of the priorities of the monsoon session and he also reminded the opposition that this is the time when, they all need to collectively think of the nation first and not the interest of their respective parties. So the Prime Minister, very in stern words, has set the tone for the monsoon session, but then it all depends on the opposition to abide by it, isn't it?
Well, good morning, Preeti. That's right. I was also just hearing the Prime Minister, talk just ahead of the monsoon session. In fact, the budget/monsoon session that begins from today. It's a very, very important session of Parliament also because of the fact that it is not only going to present the budget of the new government and perhaps, as the Prime Minister rightly said, this is, for the third time ever in history that a Prime Minister of a non-Congress, party has been elected for the third time and is going to present the budget for the third consecutive time. This has not happened in history. So in fact, this is very, very important also of the fact that, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be the Finance Minister, in fact, the only female Finance Minister to present the budget for the 6th time. So of course, there are many firsts that will be happening within this session of Parliament. So of course, as also the Prime Minister said, that it is on the opposition parties to ensure that the smooth functioning of the Parliament do take place and politics can happen outside the Parliament, but within the Parliament building or within the houses of the Parliament, it should be serious business that leads to the development of the nation and, the politics can be played out. So yes, in a stern voice, as you rightly said, Preeti, that he has said that please let us focus on the development of the country. The parties come secondary, the nation comes first. This is a very clear message from the Prime Minister, which we have heard him ahead of the beginning of this very crucial session. Also, Preeti, there will be multiple important bills that the government will be tabling in this session of the Parliament. Apart from the budget, of course, there will be the government will table the aircrafts bill, which will do away with the 90-year-old, the Aircrafts Act of, the British era Aircrafts Act, to give a boost to the civil aviation sector. We'll also see some reforms and amendments in the banking sector, which will be presented by, in fact, in this session of Parliament for reforms in the banking sector. So there'll be a total of 12 legislative bills that the government plans to bring in this session of Parliament, apart from the fact that the economic survey will be tabled today afternoon in both the houses of Parliament, and then the budget, which will happen tomorrow. So, of course, very, very crucial session for in fact, this time around in the first, the second sitting of the Lok Sabha. Earlier, we saw the swearing-in ceremony, the presidential address, and the vote of thanks. In fact, the motion of thanks to the president's address, which concluded a couple of weeks back in the first session of this Lok Sabha. So, of course, many more important legislations will be dwelled upon in this session of Parliament. So, of course, all eyes will be at it. Preeti.
All right. Yes, Dibendu. So you enlisted the important legislative business that is expected to be taken up apart from the finance minister presenting the Union Budget 2024 tomorrow. But then Prime Minister also did not forget to mention that particular day in the last session of the Parliament, wherein the opposition staged a walkout during Prime Minister's address. And, this speaks a lot about the intention, the very intention of the opposition, because the Prime Minister also, today did not miss to remind the opposition of how duty-bound it is to let the House function properly so that the nation progresses. Put all this together, what do you make of the intent of the opposition? Because for a House to function smoothly and efficiently, the opposition also plays a very critical role.
Of course, Preeti, it's not only the responsibility of the government to ensure the smooth functioning of the Parliament, because the opposition also makes a significant chunk of the members within the House. So, of course, it is very much imperative upon the opposition parties to also let the House function. And what we had witnessed inside the Parliament when the Prime Minister was speaking in the lower house as well as the upper house by the opposition parties is not parliamentary, is what many of the BJP leaders and the supporters of BJP had been talking about for a very long time. So, of course, the Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister also held a consensus-building meeting with, all the floor leaders of different parties yesterday in the Parliament building to ensure that a consensus is drawn upon and, the smooth functioning of the Parliament happens in this particular session. So, of course, all these measures are being taken by the government to build consensus and to bring, in fact, all the political parties to table, to bring all the political parties together and also to hear them and give them space inside the Parliament. But even after this, if the political parties do not let the House function, so of course it will be serious questions will be raised upon the opposition parties as to why they have not, they will be not letting the House function. So of course, strong message from the Prime Minister himself, saying that it is not just the government but also the opposition parties that needs to behave responsibly, that needs to behave in a more mature manner inside the temple of democracy, where people's issue, important legislations are being discussed about and not do something what they have done in the last session of Parliament, when in fact in Rajya Sabha we saw the opposition walk out and we saw the chaos that was created in the lower house of Parliament by the opposition parties when Prime Minister was speaking. So these are unparliamentary behavior by the opposition parties, and this is uncalled for in a parliamentary democracy, in a civilized parliamentary democracy. So of course, all eyes again, Preeti, will be on how the opposition, functions within the Parliament. And we'll have to wait and watch as to what strategies the opposition have taken up this time around inside both the houses of Parliament to let the House function and legislative business take place.
All right, Dibendu, we leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details and that analysis. So that was about Prime Minister's address to the media persons ahead of the Parliament session, the monsoon session, which begins today. And tomorrow, the Union Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, will be presenting the Union Budget 2024. Let's turn focus to other updates now. The recurrence of Nipah virus in Kozhikode, Malappuram area of the southern state of Kerala continues to perplex the authorities. The virus has claimed life of a 14-year-old boy from Malappuram district on Sunday. The resurgence of the disease, which often spreads from fruit bats to other animals and human beings, has prompted the government to impose containment measures. The State Health Minister said that at present there are 330 people in contact list. 68 of them are health workers. 101 people are in the high-risk category. 7 people have been admitted to the hospital and are undergoing treatment. The Met Department has predicted the presence of a monsoon depression over Odisha coast. Under its influence, isolated extremely heavy rainfall is expected over South Chhattisgarh. A similar weather is expected in Gujarat for the next 4 to 5 days. The IMD has issued a red alert for heavy rainfall in Uttarakhand and Gujarat and orange alert for coastal Karnataka, Chhattisgarh, Goa and Madhya Pradesh. Mumbai is experiencing torrential rains leading to IMD to issue severe weather alerts and causing major transport disruptions. With rain persisting for the 5th straight day, the Weather Department issued a yellow warning for Mumbai and its surrounding areas on Monday. Heavy rains have also disrupted flight operations in Mumbai, leading to cancellations and diversions. Air India is accommodating affected passengers with full refund or a one-time complimentary rescheduling of the travel booked on July 21st. The airline advises people to check flight status before heading to the airport. The city has been experiencing intense rainfall for several weeks now. As many as 36 flights were cancelled at Mumbai airport on Sunday as intermittent heavy spells of rain hit the city. All right, let's talk of business updates now. The Indian share market's expectations from Union Budget 2024 revolve around several key areas, with investors and stakeholders looking for measures that can drive economic growth and improve market sentiment and also foster a conducive environment for investment.
Market experts anticipate potential tweaks in the income tax slabs or increased exemptions, which can boost disposable income and consumption. They are also expecting reduction or rationalization in corporate tax rate that could positively impact corporate profitability and investment sentiment. Market expert Purv Shah says that the market is expecting a cut or removal of capital gains tax.
I think the markets are expecting the budget to have a cut onto capital gains tax. Markets have always been looking for removal of long-term capital gains completely, and that would lead to markets to rejoice.
Investors also say that increased allocation to infrastructure and development projects, including roads, railways, ports, and urban development, is expected. This can spur economic activity and benefit sectors like construction, cement, and steel.
The markets are also looking for infrastructure and developmental spend in the budget. It's always been on the increasing side, and I think an increase in infrastructure and developmental spend would be there.
Initiatives under production, linked incentive, that is PLI scheme, or other measures to boost the manufacturing sector is also expected. Policies promoting renewable energy, electric vehicles and sustainability are expected, aligning with global environmental goals and fostering new growth sectors. Investors will closely watch the announcements for their immediate and long-term impact on various sectors, and any positive news in budget will lead the markets to rise higher. Shama Mishra's report for DD India.
His re-election campaign, clearing the way for another Democrat to challenge Donald Trump. The U.S. currency slipped 0.08% to 157.38 yen early in the Asian day, while the euro gained 0.11%. China's yuan was largely unfazed by the central bank's decision to cut key interest rate. The dollar was steady at 7.28 yuan in offshore trading after People's Bank of China cut the 7-day reverse repo rate to 1.7% from 1.8%, saying the move would improve open market operations and support the real economy. All right, from business, let's turn focus to sports now. With just days left before the opening ceremony of the Paris 2024 Games, the Olympic torch relay meandered through the suburbs of the capital city and was even carried in the world's longest rowing boat. The flame made stops at some of the area's castles, including the impressive Chateau de Vincennes, where throngs of onlookers cheered the torchbearers down the route. Finally, a torchbearer carried the flame onto the longest rowing boat in the world to take a spin down the River Main. The relay will continue on Monday and will culminate with lighting of the cauldron in the host city Paris during the opening ceremony of the Games. The 2024 Paris Olympics will be held from July 26 to August 11. A group of 10 highly skilled dogs from various Indian forces has been deployed in France to ensure the safety and security of different locations during the Paris Olympics. The canine teams, accompanied by their handlers, will be responsible for sniffing and patrolling duties at various event venues. Now, this is the first ever collaboration of canine squads between the Indian and the French governments. In the boxing event at Paris Olympics, India's challenge will be led by a 6-member strong contingent. After an impressive performance at the previous Games, India is determined to return with medals this time. The biggest hopes will be centered around star boxers Nikhat Zareen, Levelina Borgohain, Nishant Dev and Amit Panghal. Take a look.
The Indian boxing team will once again enter the Paris Olympics 2024 with an intention of winning a medal for the country. Boxing is one of the most important events for India as it has been successful in bringing medals in 3 of the last 4 Olympics. And this time, there are big expectations from Nikhat Zareen along with Levelina Borgohain. 4 female and 2 male boxers are participating from India at this year's Paris Olympics. Nikhat Zareen, who qualified for the Olympics by reaching the semi-finals of the Asian Games in 2022, is the most expected to win a medal in boxing this time. Nikhat had previously succeeded in winning gold medals in the 2022 and 2023 World Boxing Championships. Nikhat had won the bronze medal in the 2022 Asian Games. Also in the same year, Nikhat was successful in winning the gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. 2-time world champion Nikhat Zareen has had a good time for preparations. Levelina Borgohain has become quite popular in the world of boxing. The experienced boxer has 3 world championship medals and an Olympic bronze medal to her name. Levelina has won a bronze medal at the Tokyo Olympics 2020. She has also won a gold medal at the 2023 World Boxing Championship. Earlier, she had won bronze medals at the 2018 and 2019 World Boxing Championships. The 26-year-old also bagged a silver medal at the 2022 Asian Games. Levelina, who won a medal in the 69 kg in the last Olympics, will compete in 75 kgs this time in Paris. She has won World Championship and Asiad medals in this weight category. Our third women qualifier, Preeti Pawar, is going to participate in the Olympics for the first time. She qualified for the Olympics by showing a brilliant performance at the Asian Games. Preeti is the youngest boxer of the Indian boxing team and has impressed everyone with her strong game at the international level. National champion Jasmine Lamboria has managed her maiden qualification for the Paris Olympics in the second World Qualification Tournament. Jasmine has got a chance to go to the Olympics due to World Anti-Doping Agency suspending Parveen Huda for not giving information about her place of stay. Meanwhile, in men's category, confident boxer Nishant Dev is going to make his maiden appearance at the Olympics. 23-year-old Nishant came into limelight for the first time in 2021 by reaching the quarterfinals at the World Boxing Championships. 2 years later, he won a bronze medal in the same tournament. Nishant had earned the first quota for India in men's boxing at the World Olympic qualifiers in Bangkok this year. The last boxer, Amit Panghal, is the first and the only Indian male boxer to have won a silver medal at the World Boxing Championships. His achievements in the realm of boxing include gold at the Commonwealth Games in 2022 and at the Asian Championship in 2019. It also includes a silver medal at the 2021 Asian Championships and the 2018 Commonwealth Games. After suffering from a shocking first-round exit in his debut Olympics back in 2020, Panghal will now set his sights on powering India to a medal finish. As the Indian boxers participate in the biggest sporting event of the world, they are set to make a mark, eyeing no less than a medal finish. Sports Desk, DD India.
All right, on that note of positivity, we end this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. You can download the respective versions for Android and iOS platforms. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.